Let's go. We got to get back to those skills. Remember we talked about the skills required. We got 25 of them. Go back to where you left off. It seems so long ago, but I guess it was yesterday morning. Remember you left a few pages for the rest of the skills? Also, I'm going to recommend, while of course this session is going to take us right up until lunchtime, we've got a very special announcement taking place, two special announcements. Number one, we changed the venue for the 2025 Live Unreal Summit, and we're going to be announcing that probably like 12:01. And also, we are announcing our featured keynote speaker. That'll take place probably at like 12:02. So therefore, if you get up and rush to lunch at 11:55 or 11:59, you're going to miss all of that. So stick around. Also, they reminded me, I just kind of stepped out to see what was going on out there, and they reminded me two things. Number one, for those of you that are like, oh yeah, I know I'm signing up for one-on-one or elite or whatever, you might want to do it before the afternoon break, because that's going to get you admission to the private mastermind that's taking place only for one-on-one and elite clients today at 4:30. So our one-on-ones and elites are invited into a room with me where we're going to be talking about how to implement a lot of what we've covered over the last 3 days. If you want to join us, just make sure you sign up before that mastermind starts, so that way you can join us for that. Also, as our organization continues to grow, and we have agents represented from all over the US and Canada, we have decided it would be best, because we get requests like this all the time. I mean, probably every day we get at least one or two attendees, or people that are, whether they're in coaching or not, it doesn't matter, just people that reach out to us and say, hey, who do you know in this market that follows the Glover U method? Who do you know in Charlotte that follows the Glover U method? Who do you know in Boston that follows the Glover U method? Who do you know in Dallas that follows the Glover U method? And so we are creating, and you'll see this being launched in the month of August, a Glover U referral network just for one-on-one and elite clients. And we're doing that because we can't safely recommend someone if we don't know their habits, if we don't know their work ethic, if we don't know the way they do business. And so for our standpoint, now watch, we're going to have, as we do, clients, multiple clients in major cities. You know, we might have 6, 10, 15 clients in one major city. So all 6, 10, or 15 of those clients will be recommended. And then from there, you can make your choice. But just to clean it up moving forward, so that way there's no, well, they've been coming the longest, or they've been this, or they've been that. Black and white. If you're in one-on-one or elite coaching, you're on our list of recommended agents when people reach out. We believe this will turn into something that, you know, right now there's just going to be, to start when it's announced, in August, there's just going to be an email address that you email, and someone's going to manage that. And of course, you know, we'll have contact information sharing back and forth or whatnot. We're already looking into a system to where we wouldn't have to have someone manually manage it. You'll be able to type in the city, the state, and you'll see the agents that are active in one-on-one or elite coaching. So that will make sure that you are placing your referrals with someone that you can trust, because if they're with us, then chances are they follow a similar business model to you. Does that sound good? Say yes. All right. Of course, our one-on-one clients are all the ones that love that one. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump back into the skills. We left off on skill number 16, which was the skill of working for sale by owners and expireds. And by the way, we have so much to get to. All right, this afternoon, we're doing a listing presentation. This afternoon, we're doing Stump the Chump. This afternoon, we're sharing our database value proposition. This afternoon, we're sharing you the actual tactics that we're using to hybrid farm. The tactics that some of our best clients, including our own agents, that are having serious success using our hybrid farming. All of that is still to come this afternoon. Plus, we've saved one of the best panels for last. You're going to hear that to finish us out. We've got another set of breakouts. So tons to cover. Okay, let's continue. Number 17. The skill of creating. These are the skills. Remember, we're talking about the skills necessary to win in the second half, given the changes coming. Which, by the way, I actually had somebody outside in the hall ask, hey, Jeff, are you going to talk about like how you're going to present to a seller this whole commission changing thing. My response was absolutely. It's part of the new script. So yes, you're going to see how I handle that live from the stage. You already saw the buy side. You're going to see how I'm going to be handling it on the sell side. I mentioned to you that our MLS went a little early, and that did happen. That happened yesterday for those of you using the Detroit MLS. Anyways, number 17, the skill of creating a new schedule and actually sticking to it. Everyone in here has written out a new schedule. You've seen all our schedules. At the last summit, I wrote out the recommended schedule for 2024, so hopefully you have it. If not, it's in the planner. I can stand up here all day and tell you what's supposed to be in your schedule, but here's what I've noticed, okay? Because I talk to the coaches. I talk to Kate, who manages the coaches, and of course, Kathy, our CEO. One of the challenges of course, this has always been a challenge with the industry, because why? We get into real estate for the 2 Fs. Not those Fs. Freedom and flexibility is what I'm talking about. We get in for freedom and flexibility. And then somebody tells us we have to follow a schedule. And so we resist it, because that's not why I got into the business. So more importantly than writing out a schedule that works for you is writing out a schedule that you actually stick to. So instead, my message for the second half of the year is this. Don't try to stick to our recommended schedule. Just stick to a schedule that you know you can stick to. You can use ours as a guide. You can add some things. You can subtract some things. You can move some things around. As you heard from James, I had probably 6 or 7 different schedules my first year until I finally got it right. And how we decided to get it right is, Jeff, just what can you actually stick to? You guys have heard the story about one of my first accountability partners. His name is Frank Felt. And one of James' assignments to me was that I had to be in the office by 7:30 if I wanted to be a top producer. Jeff, you're going to sell 100 homes this year, you got to be in by 7:30. And I was averaging like 8:45, 9 o'clock, kind of like the typical realtor time, if you will. And he said, no. Average agents get in at 8:30 or 9 o'clock. The top producers are all in before 8 o'clock. I need you in at 7:30. And so this one was tough for me. Honestly, we tried everything until we put a penalty in place. And so he said, Jeff, I want you to find an agent in your office that you know you can count on always being in earlier than you. Oh, I said, that's easy. There's this old guy. Sorry, Frank. There's this old guy named Frank Felt. He's always in when I get here. He's like, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go up to Frank and I want you to hand him 5 $100 checks, pre-written out to him, signed, and you're going to give him authorization to cash those checks every day you're in the office 1 minute later than 7:30. You have until exactly 7:30. By the way, I can remember that year, especially in the winter, running into the real estate office with my shoes and socks in one hand, my toothbrush and toothpaste in another, barefoot in snow. True story, barefoot in snow. And he's standing at the back door. Some of you, there's a few agents that were in that office, by the way, the CB Schweitzer Plymouth office, and there was a code you had to put in the back door. And he stood at the back door doing this while I have my socks and shoes and my toothbrush and toothpaste in the other hand. I literally had to set my shoes and socks down on the ground. I'm barefoot in snow to punch in this code because he wouldn't open the door for me. True. And it got me there early. By the way, by the end of that was the first year I sold over 100 houses. That's the story. You've heard 102 homes in 2008. At the end of that year, by the end of that year, Frank had cashed all 5 of my checks. True story. All 5 of them. But you know what? Here's the deal. If you're going to do some sort of contest like this with somebody in your office or a challenge, because it was a challenge, $100 if I'm late, hey, I could do stuff with that money. That was painful. Especially at the time, the year before, I'd only sold 42 houses, 43 houses, so I wasn't like rolling in the dough. If you're going to do some sort of accountability with someone like that, my recommendation to you is actually do the accountability with someone who struggles to get into the office early as well. Why? So you can get some of your money back. That's why I want that. Okay? That's number 17. Number 18, the skill of getting 2 sales from every listing you take. This is a crucial one. If listings are going to be scarce, we better get all we can from them. The skill of getting 2 sales from every listing you take. So we introduced a 2-to-1 formula. If I can get it up on the screen here, I'm hitting the clicker here, Adam. By the way, that video this morning, you should know something. The opening video, they start putting that video together, because you probably saw there was footage from the Legacy thing, there was footage from downtown. They start putting that video together at 9 p.m. The opening video that you saw this morning. They start putting it together at 9 p.m. and I don't even want to know if he got any sleep last night, because I was getting messages from him at 4 a.m. That's Live on Real Media. Seriously, they're good. They work their butts off to make sure everything shows up well for us. Okay, so 2-to-1 checklist. Let me advance this. Here we go. So this is an internal document. And what I mean by an internal document, this is something that we use internally within our organization. And this is a document that every single one of our agents has handy when they take a listing. Why? Because if it's going to be tough to get listings, which, you know, at the end of the day, we're still averaging, 75 to 100 listings per month in a listing scarce market. But regardless, we know all the work that goes into getting one listing. So why are we just going to get one listing to sell it? That's easy. Anyone can do that. Why don't we get one listing and figure out how to turn that into 2 sales? And so that's how we do it. Okay, well, how can we do that? Well, number one, we can make a coming soon a requirement. Okay, for MLSs that allow that, there you go. Number 2, we can get the sellers out to see homes right away. Why would I want to get them out to see homes right away? Well, because I know you don't think that you need to get them out right away because you just signed the listing agreement. Jay, we don't even have the paperwork, back at the office yet. And you know what they're doing? They're pulling up Zillow and they're starting to drive around neighborhoods of where they want to move an hour after you leave their house, and you haven't even finished putting their listing paperwork together. And then guess what's happening? They start, let's go see that one. They're doing this all within 24 hours of signing an agreement with you, and they're not talking to you about it because you probably didn't bring it up to them during the appointment because you were so focused on getting their listing, which I appreciate and I respect that. But we have to get them out right away if we want to capture their buy side, otherwise they'll buy from somebody else. Number 3, we notify the neighbors about the new listing. How can we do that? Door knocking, circle prospecting. Something that we're teaching right now is doing a neighborhood happy hour, where you invite all the neighbors to a neighborhood happy hour. So this gives you an opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. All right, and you can have cocktails, you can have mocktails for people that don't drink. You're inviting all of the neighbors to a happy hour that takes place at the house. Do you think you're going to form some deep relationships if you get a chance to be at the home with the homeowner? They can stay there or they can go. You're hosting a happy hour at their house to show off their home to all the neighbors. You absolutely have an opportunity to get a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and however many sales for years and years in the neighborhood if you do something like that. So my recommendation to you, instead of just doing a classic open house on Saturday or Sunday, consider doing a happy hour just for the neighborhood on Thursday or Friday. 4, there's your host the open house. Make sure you're using social media. If you're going to host an open house, you might as well take advantage of everything that Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok has to offer. Use it as I think of the open house as really 2 things. Number 1, selling the listing and or capturing more buyers. And number 2, using it as a tool to get footage so I can attract, as Alana talked about this morning. I want you to change your mindset as open houses. I don't want you to think of an open house as just a classic open house. I want you to think of an open house as an opportunity to sell the listing and capture more clients. We got that. And it's a reason to capture footage. That'll change your opinion on open houses real quick if you look at it that way. Number 5, we're going to work any incoming leads, of course, using the ALM model. You already heard about that a few days ago. Number 6, you're going to use the listing as a social media tool. I'm actually going to dig deeper on that one a little bit. Number 7, we're going to refer sellers to an agent if they're moving out of state right away. Because again, they get on their phone and they start clicking around and they start getting in a relationship. Number 8, we're going to take advantage of the honeymoon phase. 7 days after signing a contract with you, 7 days within the listing going pending, 7 days within closing. What is the honeymoon phase? The honeymoon phase is your highest opportunity to get a referral from that client. I would even argue, because I feel like today we've done a pretty good job of adding value to our database. I would argue the honeymoon phase is actually a higher probability for referrals than any other time with that client. Think about it for a second. We talk about the database formula and the client events and all the things we do to add value. And certainly we get referrals, otherwise it wouldn't be our number one source today. But I actually believe the honeymoon phase is more effective than any other phase during your database value proposition period. Why is that? Because think about it for a second. Most consumers are not talking about real estate every day. Most consumers aren't having chit chats with their friends about their home's value and any of this stuff. What are they having conversations about? Just life in general, just things that are going on in their life. But when are they having conversations about real estate? When they just listed their home for sale, when they just made a decision to move somewhere, when they just accepted an offer on their home. They're telling anyone who will stand still long enough about what their plans are when they're in the mode of buying and selling. But once that period of time wears off, they're not talking real estate anymore. Well, why does that matter? Well, why this is an effective time is because if they're bringing up real estate to their family and friends, guess what ends up happening? They start hearing from other people, oh yeah, we're thinking about making a move right now this year, but why are you doing it when interest rates are so high? They start having real estate conversations. Think about it for a second. There's almost no other time in a person's life when they're going to have as many real estate conversations as they're having other than when they first list, when they accept a contract on their house, or when it closes. So I want to be the person that reaches out and says, hey, this is your realtor, Jeff Glover, which I did this for years. James remembers I made these calls. Our staff makes them for me now. I want to be the person that reaches out and say, hey, this is your realtor, Jeff Glover. And I just wanted to let you know that your home is now live on the market. I've sent you an email with all of the links to your listing, which by the way, today, we've sent you an email with the links to your listing. And we've also sent you, oh, by the way, attached is a reel that we've created for you to download and share to your social media because I want to get my clients involved in social media. Oh, by the way, I want to follow them, add them, tag them, do whatever while I'm at the appointment getting a contract signed. So that way when I go to create a post, I can invite them as a collaborator, which Alana recommended we do. Well, what's that conversation sound like? Hey, your listing just went live. And by the way, I'm always looking to pair buyers with my sellers and sellers with my buyers. So I was wondering, who else do you know that's looking to get in on this great market? That's it. Hey, just want to let you know I sent you the links, the contracts are there, you're all set. And I was wondering, while I have you, who else do you know that's looking? Well, funny you should mention that. I just told my entire workplace that we're listing our home for sale, and my office mate or my cubicle mate or whatever said they're going to be listing. Perfect. Would you mind putting us in a group chat? Well, let me get their permission first. Hey, no problem. I'll follow up with you in a few days on that. Thank you. The honeymoon phase. Because their confidence and their excitement with us is at its highest point, and they're talking real estate. After 7 days, your chance of getting, 14 days in, stuff goes wrong. 14 days after you've taken a listing, people have left the door unlocked, they've taken the key out of the lockbox, the screen door slid open in the back, and the sellers are wondering, why there's 7 people lined up in front of their house to see it. Their confidence in you starts to wane. I'll never forget, this is probably now 8 years ago. I'm starting to lose track of time. Is that a 40-year-old thing too? Because for years and years, I said, this is about 5 years ago. It's probably 8 or 9 years ago now. Talk about honeymoon phase. Great client, great listing. I think the listing was in a place called West Bloomfield, Michigan. Just a normal colonial. I get a call from the agent that's showing it. And Jeff, hey, I got to give you a heads up because I just feel like it's the right thing to do. Hey, yeah, this is that buyer's agent showing the listing. What's going on? Well, it seems as if my buyer's child has left the screen door open and the cat got out and it's roaming around the backyard. But it's, this is a fenced in yard and, the fence seems high enough. So I think we're going to be able to shoo this thing back in the house. Okay, well, listen, I won't say a word to the seller, but you got to let me know what's going to really happen here. Give me a call as soon as you know the cat's back in the house, okay? Yep, no problem. All right, okay, good. So I didn't want to alert the seller because it's possible they're going to be able to get the cat back in the house. I'm not going to scare them until I know for sure what's going on. And so the buyer's agent calls me about 20 minutes later and says, hey, Jeff, good news. Crisis avoided. The cat's back in the house. The home's secure. It wasn't for them. Here, I'll send you an email with the feedback. Okay, no problem. So I get a call maybe 15, 20 minutes later from the seller. And they call me and I'm like, oh, I'm ready for my speech. You're probably looking for some feedback, right? I don't have the feedback yet. I'm ready to say that to him. Seller calls me and says, hey, Jeff, yeah. Oh, by the way, I know we just had a showing. I'm working on the feedback. Don't worry about it. No. That's not why we're calling. Oh, what's going on? Well, there's a cat in our home and we don't own a cat. True story. True story. This was a stray cat that was roaming around the backyard that they thought they let out. I actually started to think about how this could happen. I'm like, what would I do in that situation? Honestly, would you check for a litter box? I probably wouldn't think to check for a litter box. Cat's out on the deck, get it back in the house. How would you know who lives there? Anyways, their confidence in you diminishes as time goes on. So take advantage of the honeymoon phase. Number 9, if we want to get it back up on the screen. Number 9, double end the listing. Okay, well, watch. Here's the good news. You guys have heard me say it since the NAR settlement came out. I don't care what way you slice it. I've been doing this long enough to know consumer behavior, and here's what I know. Without question, the changes coming in August, without question, are going to cause more buyers to go directly to the listing agent. Listing agents, let's hear it for that. Okay? This is a good thing for my listing agents. Now, my buyer's agents, here's the deal. We're going to have to work on value and providing value like we talked about yesterday. But why would they go straight to the listing agent, Jeff? Because I don't care what's going on in your MLS and what the buzz is about, oh, don't worry, we'll get concessions and all that stuff. There's a certain percentage of the population, especially today with consumers being more and more savvy, there's a certain percentage of your population that's going to say, you know what? We don't want to bother with a buyer's agent. We don't want to bother with maybe having to pay a commission. So we're just going to go straight to the listing agent and avoid that whole process. Consumers today have more at their fingertips, which means buyer's agents are less valuable in their mind. That doesn't mean I'm saying that or I agree with that, but that's what they think because they got more at their fingertips than ever before. So somebody asked me, I think it was one of our half-day sessions in Baltimore, perhaps. And they came up to me and they said, Jeff, what do you think the percentage of buyers are going to start going to listing agents? I said, well, I think it's probably more than 10%, but I don't think it'll be more than 20. And so this is just me making an estimate. I could be wrong, whatever. I believe about 15% of buyers are going to be going directly to listing agents after this change. And so for my listing agents, what that means is about 1 out of every 7 listings, you're going to be double ending. And that's a good thing. Okay, now I know in some states it's different and we don't have dual agency in our state, Jeff, or in Canada it's different or whatever. I'm telling you, this is going to increase leads to listing agents without question. And I believe about 15% of buyers, probably not more than 20, 1 out of 5 would be pushing it, in my opinion. I think it's probably going to be about 15% that make a decision to work just with the listing agent. So therefore, number 9, we're going to see more of that. Number 10, using the listing agent as a reason, or using the listing as a reason to reach out to your database and generate more business there. And then number 11, list the buyer's home who is purchasing the listing. Don't ever forget about that. If we're going to see, watch, if you're going to see an increase in leads that go to listing agents because buyers don't want to mess with buyer agency, you now have an opportunity to pick up more listings from those buyers who are reaching out to you directly now. Oh, just another reason to be a great listing agent. Okay, that's the 2-to-1. And that is point number 18. Point number 19. The skill of helping a buyer understand, their buying power. The skill of helping a buyer understand their buying power. Number 19. There's really 2 things that I have written down here in my notes. This helps with buyer retention, and this helps with offer acceptance. Helping the buyer understand their buying power. Now, for time reasons, I wasn't able to go through that whole buying power checklist. And I saw a whole bunch of you in Jolene's breakout where she presented every single bullet point on the buying power checklist. But if I go through this document with a buyer, or I use it as a tool, it actually, I guess we call it retention and offer acceptance. It could be a lead generation tool. You heard Alana and I up here talking about things that you could give away for free to capture people into your funnel. There's an idea right there for you. Take your buying power checklist, brand it to yourself or your team, and create a social media ad. Put some sort of hook out there. Having trouble getting your offer accepted, or learn the 9 ways to get offers accepted today, whatever. Create some sort of hook and run that ad as a free download. Guess who's going to be downloading it? Buyers that are actively writing offers. A buyer that's just kicking tires doesn't care about what it's going to take to get their offer accepted, so they're not going to download this free download. But a buyer who's actively shopping and writing offers is going to download this document. So come up with a clever hook, create your buying power checklist, and use this as a tool to generate leads. And then, oh, by the way, be able to present it, use it as a tool to retain them to you, because it's something unique that they get while working with you. That's number 19. Number 20, the skill of promoting your buyer success stories. The skill of promoting your buyer success stories. We're talking about skills to win in the second half. I'm always going to make sure you have the latest and greatest skills. These are skills that you'll hear from other organizations a year or 2 from now, and by then we'll already be on to something else. We see this all the time. So what do I mean by buyer success stories? I want everyone to write down DOS. DOS. What does DOS stand for? Days out shopping. No different. Listen, you want to stand out as a strong buyer's agent in your market? Remember on day 1, I did the line down the middle and I showed you the comparison, listing agent, buyer's agent, listing buyer, everything's like essentially the same now. I think this kind of reminds me of that, because I think about how many listing agents promote days on market. And you should. That's an impressive thing to talk about. My average days on market is 13 days. My average days on market is 23 days. On the buy side, if you want to have a valuable tool to attract more buyers, I want you to promote your days out shopping number. Well, what does that mean? Well, that number is from the time they meet you to the time they get an offer accepted. From the day they meet you to the day they get an offer accepted. So what would that look like? Well, if I was posting on social media, I would say, congratulations to the Johnsons. I tell the story. Oh, by the way, they searched for homes for 13 days before we got their offer accepted. We were able to get their offer accepted in 13 days from the time we met. You start accumulating numbers like this, you come up with an average, you can use this in your buyer consultation. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I know you're probably shopping around, which you're going to see buyers. If they're going to have to pay for our services, which many of them are going to have to do that, we know that, then what are they going to do? They're going to shop around, no different than listing agents. So I will say to a buyer after August, and I'm going to encourage you to do the same once you know your numbers, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if you're going to be interviewing other agents, which is fine, I appreciate and respect that, I would encourage you to ask the question what their average DOS means, or what their average DOS is. Ask them what their average days out shopping for their buyers are. Now, I know that most agents aren't going to know the answer to that. And so they're going to fail at that question. And I'll say, because by the way, what DOS stands for is days out shopping. And in the last 6 months, my average buyer, of course, you're going to have to collect a few months of data for it to make sense. My average buyer secured a home in 27 days. On average, buyers who work with me secure homes in 27 days. Determine your DOS and start promoting it. The skill of promoting your buyer success stories. That's number 20. Number 21. The skill of being aware of where you are and the ability to make adjustments quickly. The skill of being aware of where you are and the ability to make adjustments quickly. This one is so important. In fact, this was already in my notes when I asked the coaches. I said, okay, if you could only add one thing to my notes this week, what would it be? And a lot of them talked about agents not being actually aware of where they're at, financially or production-wise, because they're just kind of looking at the listings and sales and moving on quickly. Well, one of my secrets to success was I had this thing called a cumulative board. And I recommend that every single person in this room, whether you're coaching with us or not, implement this model. It was a cumulative board. It was kind of like a hidden secret, if you will, because when most people are looking at their active listings and their sales, I was staring in the face every single day how far behind I was. And so I'm going to give you an example of what that looked like, because one of my coaching clients, I make him do the same thing. And then I'm going to explain how you would create one yourself. So let me fast forward to the one. There's a picture in there. So keep rolling. We might have to go a couple slides. It's a picture of a whiteboard. Yep, just keep rolling. There it is. All right. Okay, this looks very similar to what mine looked like. All right, this is Connor from Vermont. Connor, there you are. And I heard you're out a little late last night, Connor. Allegedly? Okay, well, we don't have a call this Saturday, but I'll make a note of it for next Saturday. So Connor, you can see what he's doing here, is keeping track of a bunch of different categories. By the way, Connor, where did you get the idea for these categories? You told me to do. These are the same ones I did, without question. You have contacts, you have listing appointments set, held, buyer appointments set, held, listings taken, listing pended, buyers taken, buyers pended, closed transactions, closed volume, and income paid. So what is happening here, and I'm just going to focus in on one, and I'm going to show you kind of how you would do this. Let's just look at closed transactions. So in order for Connor to hit his goal this year, he has to close 6 per month. How do I know that? Well, because if you look at January, the N stands for needed, the A stands for actual. So 6 times 12, 72 transactions, which is his goal, and he needs 6 per month in order to hit his goal. And so in the month of January, his actual was only 3. Now, if we don't have something like this up in front of us, when we have a not so great month, which he only did half of what he needed to do, what do we normally say in our mind and maybe out loud to anyone who would ask? Oh, that's okay. We'll make it up when? Next month, next quarter. The whole point of the cumulative board is it's staring you in the face. I'm telling you, this is one of, if you were to ask me, Jeff, if you could just make a list of like 9 things that were your secret to success during, the beginning years, without question, this would make that list. Because instead of feeling like things are good, even when I had big months, watch this. You can see here, even with Connor, let's see, in March, let me see when he had a big month. Okay, here we go. In May, if you follow that all the way down to the bottom with closings, in May, he needs 13 closings in May in order to get back on track. But he only had 9. Now watch. Based on the year, you would argue that 9 was a pretty good month. And when you get 9 commission checks in 30 days, you're probably like, hey, this is good. Things are moving in the right direction. But Connor and myself, when I'm staring at a board like this, in May I had 13 closings, and I'm sorry, where was I just at? In May I needed 13 closings. I just had 9. Well, that means the next month I don't need 6, like most of us would say. I still need 10 closings the next month to get back on track. So it's a very simple, what I call cumulative approach. If the number in this, well, for me, I'm just going to use my numbers. My number was always 8. Okay. If I always needed 8 and then the next month I only had 6, then that means I was too short. So therefore, if this is January on my board, the next month would say February with a line down the middle. I don't need 8. I need how many? 10. So therefore, needed, actual, I'm keeping track every single month. If you did this with, this is a lot of stuff. If you just did this with contacts, maybe appointments gone on, contracts signed, you could pick 4 or 5 categories to pay attention to. The reason why this works is the word awareness. because you're staring this in the face every month. Otherwise, when I have good months, because I remember one of my first boards, I'll just say the month was March. There was a time when even though my goal was 8, I was so far behind. In March, it said I needed 14 closings to get caught up. And let's just pretend, again, I had a good month. I had 10. I'm working my way there. But the goal doesn't go back to 8 in April. I'm still 4 short. The goal is 8 plus 4. So now my goal is 12 for April. The ability to know where you're at all times and I recommend you use the cumulative board approach. All right. That's number 21. 22. The skill of touching the appointment a minimum of 5 times once it's set. The skill of touching the appointment 5 times once it's set. Wait a minute, Jeff. I set the appointment on, today is Wednesday. The appointment's Saturday. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. There's only 4 days. You want me to touch this appointment 5 times? Yes. Consumers, when they set an appointment with you, you have to understand they're researching, they're clicking, they're downloading apps, they're opening up apps, they're inquiring on properties. They're getting inundated with calls and texts and emails, just like you do when you work your CRM. They're getting inundated with stuff. All right, let's be honest for a second. Has there ever been a time where you had an appointment set with someone and before the appointment takes place, they went with somebody else? Show of hands. Has that ever happened to anybody? Real high, real high, real high, real high. Okay, good. So only 90% of my room. That is happening more today than it happened 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Why? Because consumers today are getting inundated with notifications and stuff from realtors. So things like, oh, Jeff, you're not going to believe this. The neighbor stopped by and they brought a buyer with them and they have a cash offer. Watch. 5 times. You have the pre-appointment package, the pre-qual. You have a call with that. You have you send them a couple text messages. You send them an email asking them more questions about their house. Find reasons to engage with your appointments more often than you currently are. My number's 5. Every single appointment I go on, I find 5 reasons to engage with them before I get there. It helps my appointment held ratio. It also helps my held to taken ratio. Why does it help my held to taken ratio? Well, because I have more rapport than the other guys or gals when I get there. If you want to see your results increase in this new industry we're in, the way we're operating, take advantage of that. That's point number 22. 23, the skill of mastering all 5 prospecting methods taught at Glover U. The skill of mastering all 5 prospecting methods taught at Glover U. The skill of mastering all 5 prospecting methods taught at Glover U. You know what they are. Phone, which includes text messages. Door, which means going to their door. Email, which is absolutely a prospecting tool. You're going to see some of that after lunch when we talk database. Social media and direct mail. Phone, door, email, social media, and direct mail. Go all in on those 5. Are there others? Probably. Those are the 5 that we've gone all in on. That's number 23. 24. The skill of creating great content and following the skill of creating great content and following our copywriting method. The skill of creating great content and following our copywriting method. So there's one left. There's 2 things we have left to do. We're going to do them after lunch because that's only 24. Well, 25. In fact, I'll give you the 25 so that way you know what we're going to cover when we come back from lunch. 25, just go ahead and write this down. We're going to cover it when we come back. And we're going to do a little bit with number 24 when we come back as well. Write down number 25, the skill of adding value to your database. The skill of adding value to your database and executing on a hybrid farming plan. the skill of adding value to your database and executing on a hybrid farming plan. The skill of adding value to the database and executing on a hybrid farming plan, both of which we're going to cover when we come back from lunch. I also promised you that I have some really good copy for you to use in your social media posts.